Welcome to the Harris County Flood Control District's virtual community engagement meeting to discuss the Clear Creek Federal Flood Risk Management Project, which is a partnership project with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. This virtual community meeting is being offered by the Flood Control District to share vital information with the community and to gather your input on flood risk reduction efforts in your area. Community engagement is a critical component of our work, and we appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us this evening. My name is Robert Frigge with the Flood Control District Communications team. I am joined tonight by a team of Flood Control District leadership and subject matter experts to ensure we continue to keep you up to date on important flood mitigation efforts. We are glad to see the community engage with this project and look forward to gathering your feedback tonight. Moving forward, we will continue to share updates on this and other projects in your area to keep you involved and informed. First, we would like to begin tonight's meeting with remarks from Harris County Precinct 1 Commissioner Rodney Ellis.
I'm Rodney Ellis. On behalf of Harris County Precinct 1 and the Flood Control District, welcome to this informative meeting about significant flood control projects in your area. As always, we have you in mind when we design projects to mitigate flooding to protect your homes and businesses. We want to be transparent with all projects because we cannot do it without your participation. Every community, regardless of the zip code, deserves increased protection from flooding. That's why equity is our guiding principle in assigning our infrastructure investments. In addition, we're prioritizing communities that are most vulnerable to flooding and have historically taken the longest to recover. Let me thank flood control officials for developing this and other projects across Harris County. Most importantly, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to participate in this community meeting tonight. We know you could have been somewhere else doing something else, but we're glad you're here. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ellis. We appreciate you sharing remarks. Next, we would like to share remarks from Harris County Precinct 2 Commissioner Adrian Garcia.
Hi, everybody. Adrian Garcia, County Commissioner, Precinct 2. Thank you for joining today's conversation about the Clear Creek Federal Flood Risk Management Project. And unfortunately, I cannot be with you in person, but you are in great hands with the Harris County Flood Control District, along with the Army Corps of Engineers. Now, this project is a very important project, so we need your input to ensure that we do all that we can to get this project just right. Now, this project is targeted to reducing flooding in the Clear Creek watershed. And this can be done through a number of ways, including stormwater detention basins, the conveyance along the Clear Creek watershed, as well as enhancing environmental habitats. So we need your input. But look, this is all about Revive to Thrive. My strategy to provide strategic investments in our communities so those of you who have long lived in your neighborhoods can see the improvements of the county and my precinct office and our federal partners all working together to bring those investments now, those improvements now. So it's not just gentrification that is bringing the improvements and enhancements. So with that, please follow us on our website at hcp2.com or on all of the social media platforms. We're on all of them. Or simply call 311 if you have any questions or concerns. But again, thank you for your participation. I know that you're going to make this project even better. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia, for sharing your remarks as well. This virtual public meeting will begin with a presentation to share updates on the Clear Creek Federal Flood Risk Management Project, including the supplemental environmental assessment and public comment period, which is the main reason we are having this meeting today. The presentation materials for this meeting are available in Spanish at publicinput.com/C03.
La presentación completa en español está disponible en publicinput.com/C03.
The presentation will be followed by a virtual question and answer session with Flood Control District team members, where we'll respond to your questions and comment on some of the frequently asked questions we received from the public. Attendees will be able to submit comments and questions through the website or by phone. Please note questions related to the supplemental environmental assessment will be prioritized during this meeting. Any comments not addressed during the Q&A session will receive a response from the Flood Control District after the close of the comment period. Instructions on how to participate in the virtual meeting are included on this slide, on this virtual meeting webpage, and on the Flood Control District's website. I will also share a reminder of these instructions when we reach the Q&A portion of the meeting. We will now transition to Scott Elmer, Chief Partnerships and Programs Officer with the Flood Control District, who will share information about the Flood Control District and this project. Scott, over to you.
Thanks, Robert. And I really would like to thank everybody that's joining us tonight. We really appreciate your input. In this presentation, we want to give you a detailed overview of the Clear Creek Federal Project, and we want to discuss the supplemental environmental assessment and comment period. Before we get to the project specifics, we want to share a bit of background about the Flood Control District. The Harris County Flood Control District is a special purpose district that was created by the Texas legislature in response to flooding in 1929 and 1935. We started in 1937. We are governed by the Harris County Commissioners Court. We also work very closely with other entities in our region, such as the Harris County Engineering Department and the City of Houston. The organization was created in part to serve as a local partner to leverage federal funding for flood damage reduction projects. Our mission has expanded since our founding, leading to billions of dollars in federal, state, and locally funded infrastructure improvements in the ground. The mission of the Harris County Flood Control District is to provide flood damage reduction projects that work with the appropriate regard for community and natural values. One of the most difficult challenges we face is constructing effective projects that are sensitive to community and natural values in a highly urbanized area. Harris County includes 23 main watersheds, totaling approximately 1,800 square miles and more than 2,500 linear miles of channel. For context, 2,500 miles is approximately the distance between New York to California. A watershed is a geographical region of land that drains to a common channel or outlet. Each watershed in the county has its own unique characteristics and needs. The project we are presenting tonight is in the Clear Creek watershed and is located in southern Harris County. This watershed also encompasses portions of Galveston County, Brazoria County, and Fort Bend County. Harris County and the surrounding areas are flood prone for a number of reasons. Mainly, we experience extreme rainfall events, including tropical storms and hurricanes. Our area is made up of flat, slow draining land, and we see large concentrations of clay soils that do not soak up excess rainfall quickly. While the Flood Control District plays a critical role in flood risk reduction, we are only one of several entities involved in these efforts in our region. When rain falls on your roof, it flows through several jurisdictions. This includes streets and drains that can be managed by different entities depending upon your location, including the Harris County Engineering Department, a municipal utility district, or another city such as the City of Houston. The rain then flows into a larger channel, creek, or bayou that is owned and maintained by the Flood Control District. This slide illustrates the various jurisdictions, which sometimes we even share with other entities. Inside of neighborhoods, as shown on the left side of this illustration, storm sewers and roadside ditches collect stormwater runoff and start the process of moving it away from houses and streets. Storm sewers and roadside ditches are the responsibility of the underlying municipality. The larger bayous and channels that take the collected stormwater and move it through our drainage system to Galveston Bay are the responsibility of the Flood Control District. This is shown on the right side of the illustration. In the middle is a stormwater detention basin, sometimes constructed by flood control, sometimes by other entities. When storm sewers on the left are increased, this creates an increase in runoff. Since it is our policy to avoid any adverse impacts from our projects, Detention basins help us to safely take in and temporarily store excess stormwater during heavy rain events. Often, we partner with Harris County precincts, utility districts, and others to add recreational amenities such as trails to these basins and along our channels. On August 25th, 2018, Harris County voters approved $2.5 billion in bonds for the flood risk reduction projects. This vote followed a series of 23 meetings with the community members across Harris County, one in each watershed. This resulted in a list of what is now 181 bond IDs, and bond IDs have multiple projects within them. The actual timing of each individual project depends upon a variety of factors, including environmental permitting, right-of-way acquisition, utility relocations, and sometimes requirements of a particular grant. Project lists and projected schedules are updated regularly on our website at www.hcfcd.org. The highlights we are sharing tonight are what we provided Harris County Commissioners Court in October of 23. Since the inception of the bond program, we have completed or closed 29 bond IDs. We have secured $1.7 billion in partnership funding to stretch the bond funds even further for our community. We have hosted more than 195 community engagement meetings where we have received more than 9,000 comments from attendees. As our bond projects move forward, we are making significant progress toward resiliency in Harris County. Your input is desired and is critical to our efforts, and we want to ensure that our conversations continue. We'll continue these updates moving forward, and we will share progress on our bond program. While our bond was for $2.5 billion, the full cost of every project in the bond tables is almost $5 billion. So we made it clear from the outset that we would need funding partners to fully construct the projects in the bond program. As I mentioned, we've had significant success so far. We have secured more than $1.7 billion in partner funds for projects across Harris County. This graphic illustrates the many sources of those partnerships, including federal, state, and local funding that the Flood Control District is working on to secure funding for Harris County projects. Each agency has its own definition of eligible projects and its own requirements for local match funding. So the Flood Control District works diligently to match projects to the right partnership opportunities. The Flood Control District has partnered with the Army Corps of Engineers on a number of projects over the years, including the White Oak Bayou Project, the Brays Bayou Project, and the Hunting Bayou Federal Projects. The Clear Creek Federal Project is another example of a partnership project with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Since this is a partnership project, we would like to share remarks from Deputy District Engineer for Programs and Project Management for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Galveston District, Mr. Byron Williams.
Hello, my name is Byron Williams, Deputy District Engineer for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Galveston District, the champions of the Gulf Coast. I am pleased to have the opportunity today to help set the stage for this important public meeting about the Clear Creek Federal Flood Risk Management Project. We welcome and depend on your involvement and collaboration as we work together to support the community. The Galveston District is committed to providing vital public engineering, design, and construction services to strengthen our nation's security, to energize the economy, and reduce risk from flooding and disasters. This district also plays a key role in the Gulf Coast and America's well-being by keeping waterways open for navigation and commerce. As excellent stewards of taxpayer dollars and the environment, leadership and staff take creative and innovative approaches to the Corps' projects, ensuring timely completion, on budget, and are built to last. Our organization had the ability, resources, and foresight to strategize and use tools to deliver this Clear Creek Flood Control Project efficiently and with the consideration for the community and meeting their needs, a community in which I myself live in. This led to the 1043B partnership, where capable sponsors can self-execute design and construction with the support of the Corps of Engineers. On this particular project, we have worked with the Harris County Flood Control District through refinement of the flood risk management project for construction, while ensuring all federal regulations are met to preserve release of federal cost share for this project. Reducing risk starts with an awareness and understanding of your own potential to face flooding, from localized heavy rain to large-scale hurricanes. While no entity or organization can eliminate flooding entirely, this awareness at all levels of a community leads to shared responsibility and resiliency. Individual, neighborhood, community, state, and federal actions all add up to better solutions to reduce those risks. Federal, state, and local government entities share their responsibilities for flood risk management through programs and authorities. The Corps, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and other federal agencies oversee these programs to promote flood risk management and assist states and local communities to reduce flood damage. The goal of the Corps' flood risk management mission is to save lives and reduce property damage from flooding, and I thank you, along with the Harris County Flood Control District, for your continued support.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. We appreciate you sharing your remarks. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers was established in 1779. Their mission is to deliver vital engineering solutions in collaboration with partners to strengthen national security, to energize the economy, and to reduce risk from disaster. Under authority of the Flood Control Act of 1936, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has developed into the foremost flood agency in the nation, and has shared its knowledge with many organizations, both in this country and abroad. Through Section 404 of the Clean Waters Act and Section 10 of the Rivers and Harbor Act of 1899, the Army Corps of Engineers has jurisdiction over waters of the United States. It is responsible for protecting many of the nation's aquatic environments, including oceans, rivers, lakes, tributaries, and ponds. We will now move into the part of the program that is specifically about the Clear Creek Federal Project in the Clear Creek watershed. The goal of this project is to reduce flood risk in the area by providing a combination of channel conveyance improvements and stormwater detention basins, as well as to enhance environmental conditions through habitat restoration. As a reminder, we are looking for your input as we discuss the project in more detail. Please feel free to drop any questions or comments in the comment box, or to comment via phone by pushing the star key. First, let's take a minute to review the Clear Creek watershed. The map on the screen identifies the limits of Harris County through the black outline, and the Clear Creek watershed filled in red. The Clear Creek watershed covers approximately 200 square miles, with about 167 miles of open streams, including the primary stream, Clear Creek. Clear Creek flows from west to east into Galveston Bay. And according to the latest census data, the watershed has a population of approximately 500,000 people. This watershed spans across two Harris County precincts, Precinct 1 and Precinct 2. You'll notice on the map, Precinct 1 is in purple and Precinct 2 is in green. While this project is led by Harris County Flood Control District, it is important to note that the watershed goes across 3 other counties that will see benefits from the project in addition to Harris County. These are Galveston County, shown in purple, Brazoria County, shown in green, and Fort Bend County, on the left, shaded in red. The watershed also spans across 16 cities, including Houston, Pearland, Friendswood, Webster, and League City, just to name a few. We've indicated several of the cities located in the watershed on the map in a red star. In addition, the Harris County Flood Control District, this watershed encompasses 3 other drainage or flood control districts. These are the Galveston County Consolidated Drainage District, Brazoria County Conservation and Reclamation District number 3, and Brazoria Drainage District number 4. It is important to note that these other public agencies are conducting projects of their own, which add to the overall flood mitigation efforts for this area. There are a few key characteristics of the watershed to keep in mind as we move forward with our presentation. Between Clear Lake and Friendswood, Clear Creek is in a natural state and is subject to tidal influences. The area is composed of urban and rural residential areas, commercial areas, agricultural lands, and some oil and gas facilities. And in recent decades, development activity has continued to increase throughout this watershed. Additionally, this area has experienced widespread flooding during heavy rainfall events, including devastating flood events such as Hurricane Carla in 1961 and Tropical Storm Allison in 2001 and Hurricane Harvey in 2017. Before we get into the details of the project and its current status, we wanted to share a brief overview of the project history. We'll start from the beginning and highlight key project milestones along the way. Beginning in 1962, the U.S. Flood Control Act authorized the study of flooding issues in this area. We've included an image from the original plan in 1962. The plan recommended 31 miles of grass-lined trapezoidal channels that would replace the 41 miles of existing winding natural channels. The plan limits ran from the far upstream end of Clear Creek to the mouth at Clear Lake. This plan was submitted to Congress and obtained project authorization under the Flood Control Act of 1968, which the project still operates under today. As part of the authorization in 1968, the Army Corps of Engineers provided guidance that the plan needed to be optimized during the pre-construction engineering and design, or PED stage. This guidance moved the project back into a feasibility study during the early 1970s. Then a new plan was published in the 1982 Pre-Construction Authorization Planning Report. This plan was called the 10-year Modified Plan. It recommended the project limit be truncated along Clear Creek from Clear Lake to McCowa Bridge, as shown in the top image on the right. It also modified the level of service from a 100-year storm event to a 10-year storm event. In 1987, design and construction began, starting with the second outlet channel and gated structure just downstream of Clear Lake, which is shown in the image on the bottom right. By 1998, the second outlet channel was constructed, and 8 of the 11 bridge replacements and modifications from the 10-year modified plan had been completed. For more details on this part of the project, you can visit hcfcd.org/second outlet. By 1999, in response to community opposition, the project was put on hold to address the public's concerns around environmental impacts. After meeting with the public, modifications to the design plan were presented to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, but these changes were determined by the Army Corps of Engineers to be outside of their discretionary authority. While some adjustments can be made based on field conditions, there is a limit to what and how much can change without requiring congressional approval. Because the recommended changes were significant, the project was shifted back into the feasibility stage for the third time, which meant the project had to reapply for federal funding. This initiated the General Reevaluation Study, which included the usual consideration for flood risk management, but it also added consideration for environmental habitat enhancements. The General Reevaluation Report, or GRR, that was submitted to Congress in 2012 included channelization, stormwater detention, as well as environmental enhancements such as reforestation and invasive species removal. This plan was approved in 2013. Several years later, in 2017, Hurricane Harvey made landfall and caused widespread flooding throughout this area. In 2018, 2 important funding milestones happened. Congress passed the Bipartisan Budget Act, which provided $187 million for constructing the Clear Creek federal project. And the Harris County voters approved the 2018 bond package, which provided an additional $73 million towards this project. Then in June 2019, the Flood Control District and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers entered into a partnership agreement, or PPA, where the Flood Control District was formally recognized as the project team lead for implementing the Clear Creek federal project. As the lead agency, the Flood Control District will manage, design, and build the project, buy land, easements, and right-of-way, relocate utilities as needed, and operate and maintain the project after construction is completed. The Army Corps of Engineers will be responsible for the technical and policy review and providing final approval of the Clear Creek Federal Project. They will also advance the projected federal share of eligible project costs to the flood control district before costs are incurred. Next, we'll take a look at the project lifecycle and the current status of this project. Since the Clear Creek Federal Project is a partnership project between the Flood Control District and the Army Corps of Engineers, the project lifecycle looks different than a flood control standard project. As we mentioned before, the project was initiated in 1962 and received authorization in 1968. Through all the rescoping efforts, the project consistently states that the 1968 authorization is the governing authorization. The Army Corps of Engineers managed the project during the feasibility stage shown on the left side of the screen in red. With the passing of the project appropriations in 2018, the project was then transferred to the Flood Control District to take the lead as the non-federal sponsor. Everything on the right side of the screen falls under the Flood Control District, including design and implementation and operation and maintenance. As shown in green at the bottom of the screen, the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, compliance is required throughout each stage of the project. Community updates, shown by the yellow stars, are also incorporated throughout the project lifecycle. We will continue to share updates with the community throughout this process, and we'll have another public meeting towards the end of the pre-construction engineering and design, or PED, stage. The two yellow diamonds on the right side of the screen indicates the project is currently in construction for Mud Gully and the PED stage for the remaining project components. So, what is a PED stage? The objective of the PED stage is to update and optimize the general reevaluation report plan to reflect the current conditions of the site. As part of this process, we have prepared a supplemental environmental assessment, or SEA. This captures modifications in the PED plan that were not previously included in the 2012 Environmental Impact Statement report that was completed for the GRR. The recommended modifications in the PED plan are being routed through the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Post-Authorization Change Report, or PACR, process for approval. This is a formal process with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to ensure the Clear Creek Federal Project provides similar benefits to the General Reevaluation Report that was previously approved by Congress, and that it remains within the discretionary authority of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. The PED plan was conditionally approved in November of 2023. Starting today, the SEA is available for review and a 30-day public comment period, which we will discuss in more detail a little later in the presentation. So before we get into the details of the General Reevaluation Report and the recommended pre-construction design and engineering plans, we would like to review some terminology that will be used as we move forward in this presentation. First, let's talk about channel conveyance improvements. Also known as modifications, channel conveyance improvements are man-made changes to a channel's characteristics, typically for the purposes of reducing flood damages by increasing its overall conveyance capacity. This can be accomplished by widening and/or deepening the channel, by reducing the friction by removing vegetation, or occasionally by adding concrete lining. While channel conveyance improvements move stormwater more efficiently out of an area, stormwater detention basins provide storage for runoff of floodwaters. This storage is temporary and it prevents water from overwhelming channels. It also helps to ensure that flooding risk is not transferred to downstream communities. When channel stormwater levels drop back down, the stored stormwater drains back into the channel by gravity via outfall pipes appropriately sized to drain the basin. When stormwater detention basins are used in conjunction with channel conveyance improvements, stormwater detention is usually constructed first to avoid adverse impacts. While all stormwater detention basins essentially function the same way, they can be designed as either a wet bottom or a dry bottom basin. Wet bottom basins can feature a permanent pool of water at the bottom of the basin, a vegetated shelf, and a bottom shelf. The area from the top of the water to the top of the basin's banks is available for additional flood water storage. Dry bottom basins feature a grass lining and include pilot channels and cross slopes to facilitate mowing and complete drainage of basin between rain events. The recommended stormwater detention basins for this project are wet bottom basins. Generally, wet bottom basins are preferred because they can be constructed deeper and therefore store more stormwater. They provide environmental and community benefits, and they require less maintenance over time. When we talk about stormwater detention basins, we talk about how much stormwater they can hold in a unit of measurement called an acre-foot. That measurement refers to the volume of water 1 foot deep over 1 acre. For context, 1 acre-foot equals approximately 325,851 gallons of stormwater, or you can think of it as 1 football field covered with 1 foot of water. So we'll go over a little bit more terminology. Many of you may have already heard the phrase 100-year storm event. This is often incorrectly interpreted to mean that it can or will only occur every 100 years. But in actuality, a 100-year storm event has a 1% chance of occurring in any given year and a 26% chance of occurring during a 30-year period of time. A 500-year storm event has a 0.2% chance of occurring in any given year. Another term that you might hear is NOAA Atlas 14. This is an updated rainfall data used by FEMA to determine flood risk in an area. Atlas 14 data was used in the modeling of the PED plan, whereas USGS 1998 rainfall data, which is now outdated, was used for the original GRR plan. Atlas 14 estimates are more current than USGS and incorporate data from newer technologies. The graph on this slide compares the depths using Atlas 14 and USGS rainfall data for the 100-year and 500-year storm event in the Clear Creek watershed. Atlas 14 is in red, USGS is in blue. As you can see, the depth for a 100-year storm event using Atlas 14 data is 18 inches, which is similar to the 19.3 inches used for a 500-year event using the USGS data. This helps explain how much rainfall has increased and the importance of using this new modeling data with the PED plan. Now that we've reviewed the history of the project, we've discussed the project life cycle, we'd like to take a closer look at the General Reevaluation Report, GRR, and the PED plans. I'd like to have Ms. Tommy Jo Scott, who is the project manager overseeing the Clear Creek Federal Project, walk us through this portion of the presentation. Tommy Jo?
Thank you, Scott. We'll start with an overview of the GRR plan and the reasons it's needed to be reevaluated, followed by an overview of the PED plan. And then we will compare the benefits and impacts of the GRR with the recommended PED plan. As a reminder, GRR stands for the General Reevaluation Report. The 2012 GRR plan included approximately 15 miles of channel conveyance improvements along Clear Creek from State Highway 288 to FM 1959, which is indicated by the orange line. Other highlights of the GRR plan include channel conveyance improvements for Mud Gully, which is south of Beltway 8 along Beamer Road, Turkey Creek, located to the east of Mud Gully, Mary's Creek, shown near the bottom center of the screen. Bridge replacements and modifications are shown using the gold bar and teal bars, and environmental enhancements are shown in different shades of green. The GRR plan also included approximately 500 acre-feet of stormwater detention, which is also shown in orange. And the 3 placement areas are shown in light purple. So why did the GRR plan need to be evaluated again? This was a recommended next step in the plan to ensure changes in development and technology were considered. The GRR plan was based on engineering modeling that started in 1999, which is almost 30 years ago, when we upgraded the engineering modeling software and revised the land use, topography, and rainfall data to consider recent development in the project area, we uncovered a number of issues with the GRR plan, including structures that would be adversely impacted, higher water surface elevations, and as a result of development in the area, significantly more utilities were discovered than when first investigated. Plus, some of the channel work had already been completed by other agencies. Now, let's take a look at the recommended PED plan. Since the 2012 GRR plan no longer meets the benefits approved by Congress, including having no adverse impacts, we knew we needed to update and optimize the project design to ensure that the PED plan provides similar benefits originally authorized by Congress in 2018 and remains within the Army Corps of Engineers Chief's discretionary authority, avoids transfer of risk from one area to another, maximizes areas with undeveloped property to minimize disturbances to the local community as much as possible, and considers flood risk reduction projects being completed through other agencies such as channel work or development to raise structures in the area. This brings us to the new recommended PED plan. At a high level, the main differences between the GRR and PED plans are channel conveyance improvements on Clear Creek will decrease from 15.1 miles with the GRR to 6.4 miles with the PED plan. Both Mary's Creek and Turkey's Creek will be removed. Stormwater mitigation volume increased from approximately 500 acre-feet in the GRR plan to 2,360 acre-feet with the PED plan, through the expansion and addition of stormwater detention basins. All bridge replacements have been removed, and for Mud Gully, the changes between the GRR and PED plan were negligible. Now let's take a closer look at the recommended channel conveyance improvements in the PED plan. As we mentioned on the prior slide with the PED plan, the channel conveyance improvements along Clear Creek are now concentrated between Cullen Boulevard and Pearland Parkway. This includes 6.4 miles of 140-foot bench cut sections to increase channel conveyance, removal of invasive species, tree buffers and reforestation areas, and all other channel work and bridge replacements have been removed. On the right side of the screen, you'll notice an example of the before on the top and a view of the after on the bottom to illustrate the channel benching. However, trees will be planted along the slopes to ensure natural components are incorporated into the channel. In the second after picture on the bottom right, you can see what the channel will look like once the tree plantings are complete. Since there were no significant field changes or modifications to the Mud Gully site conditions, this component of the Clear Creek Federal Project did not change and was able to enter the construction stage. The improvements being made will extend the existing concrete channel lining downstream along Mud Gully from Sage Down Lane to just past Beamer Road Bridge. This is the only concrete lining channel in the project because we are constrained by Beamer Road, and the concrete lining is needed to provide slope stabilization and erosion control. Construction for this reach is anticipated to be complete by the end of the third quarter of 2024. To support the channel conveyance improvements and ensure the risk of flooding isn't transferred to downstream communities, stormwater detention basins have been expanded and added with the PED plan. All of the recommended basins are wet bottom stormwater detention basins and will provide a combined total of 2,360 acre-feet of storage. There are 2 stormwater detention basins that were part of the GRR plan that remain in the recommended PED plan. These are the Wayside East and West stormwater detention basins. These basins will provide approximately 255 acre-feet of stormwater detention storage. The IBC stormwater detention basin is being modified as part of the recommended PED plan to expand the basin. This basin will provide approximately 600 acre-feet of stormwater detention storage. The Hughes stormwater detention basin is one of the newly added basins in the PED plan. The construction of this basin will receive funds from Bond F02. The basin will be constructed on a 100-acre site owned by the Flood Control District and provide approximately 1,000 acre-feet of stormwater detention. Lastly, we have the 2 City of Pearland stormwater detention basins that are also new additions to the PED plan. The East Basin will provide approximately 270 acre-feet of stormwater detention volume, and the West Basin will provide approximately 235 acre-feet of stormwater detention volume. Here is an example of the stormwater detention basin for the project. The before image is shown on the left, and the right illustrates what the basin would look like once construction is complete. To help visually compare the differences of the GR and PED plan, this image shows the design elements in the recommended PED plan, along with the elements from the GR plan that have been removed. The channel conveyance improvements in PED plan are shown in orange. As we mentioned on a prior slide, the improvements are now concentrated on Clear Creek between Cullen Boulevard and Pearland Parkway, and on Beamer Road for Mud Gully. The stormwater detention basins included in the recommended PED plan are also shown in orange. Environmental enhancements and reforestation areas are shown in green. The black lines and black bars represent channel conveyance improvements and bridge replacements that were in the GR that have been removed. This includes both Turkey Creek and Mary's Creek. The light purple areas represent the 4 recommended placement areas: Alameda Genoa, Allison Road, Scott Street, and near the bottom left, you'll notice an inset for the 4th area, which is Mustang Bayou. These placement areas will be used for excavated materials from the construction of the project. You'll also notice 2 stormwater detention basins in blue. These 2 local supplemental basins support the project, but they are not part of the Clear Creek Federal Project. They are the Stormwater Detention Basin at Reverend William and Audrey Lawson Park, and the South Belt Stormwater Detention Basin. We will show how these 2 already completed basins complement the overall project design in a minute, but again, they are not part of the Clear Creek Federal Project. Now that we've highlighted the details and differences of each plan, let's compare the preliminary benefits and potential impacts of the GR and PED plans. Using the updated engineering modeling, this exhibit shows the GR plan using 2021 conditions for the 100-year storm event. The green dots represent where the areas of inundation has been removed from structures. The purple dots illustrate structures that would see a reduction in flood depth, and the red triangles represent structures that would adversely be impacted by the GR plan. And as you can see, this shows that the GR plan would adversely impact a considerable number of structures. There are about 2,400 structures downstream of the channel that would be adversely impacted during the 100-year storm event. When we look at the recommended PED plan for the 100-year storm event, you will notice far fewer red triangles and a lot more purple and green dots on the screen. During a 100-year storm event, only about 11 structures would be adversely impacted compared to the 2,400 structures with the GR plan. And these 11 are mitigated with the 2 supplemental stormwater detention basins that are already complete and not part of the project. Once we take the supplemental South Belt Stormwater Detention Basin and the Stormwater Detention Basin at Reverend William and Audrey Lawson Park into account, using the latest engineering modeling with the new recommended PED plan, it is estimated that approximately 5,500 total structures will benefit and 0 structures will be adversely impacted during a 100-year storm event. During the 500-year storm event, the impact of the 2012 GR plan increased significantly, with approximately 7,200 structures adversely impacted. Here's a comparison with the recommended PED plan using the 500-year storm event. As you can see, 0 structures would be adversely impacted compared to the 7,200 structures with the GRR plan. Also, with the PED plan during a 500-year storm event, more than 15,300 structures will benefit. When we include the 2 supplemental stormwater detention basins in the modeling, we continue to see 0 structures adversely impacted and more than 15,300 structures benefited during a 500-year storm event. Now that we have discussed the details and benefits, now let's take a look at the estimated project cost for recommended PED plan. The estimated cost for all of the project elements we just discussed, including Mud Gully, is $295 million. The federal sponsor is responsible for up to 75% of the total project costs, including 95% of the design and construction costs. The Flood Control District, as the non-federal sponsor, is responsible for a minimum of 25% of the total project costs, including 5% of the design and construction and all real estate and utility relocation costs. Specific to this project, and a big advantage of working on the Section 1043 pilot program, is that the Army Corps of Engineers will provide the Flood Control District with a monthly cash advance instead of reimbursing the project after the project is constructed. To build projects which include widening and deepening bayous, creeks, and their tributaries, and constructing large stormwater detention basins, the Flood Control District often needs to acquire additional land for right-of-way, which could include homes, businesses, and other structures. It is the Flood Control's goal to minimize right-of-way acquisition whenever possible. And while pre-construction engineering and design plans require fewer acquisitions than the general reevaluation report plan, there will be some private and public right-of-way acquisitions needed for the project sites, including stormwater detention basements and placement areas. The exact properties and project widths requirements are still being determined through survey work, which takes time. But once a property is determined to be required, the recommendation is sent to Harris County Commissioners Court for review. If approved, landowners are formally contacted through the Harris County Real Property Division. For more details on property acquisition process, please visit the project webpage at hcfcd.org/C03 and see the right-of-way acquisition section. One of the main reasons for meeting today is to share details about the Supplemental Environmental Assessment, or SEA. We have received conditional approval of the PED plan. However, final approval is dependent on the completion of the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA process. We have asked Jonathan Hawley, the Environmental Services Department Manager, to share details about the SEA and the 30-day comment period.
Thank you, Tommy Joe. First, let's discuss what a supplemental environmental assessment is and why it was created for this project. Essentially, the SEA was created to provide supplemental documentation of environmental impacts for all modifications made in the PED plan that were not included in the approved 2012 final environmental impact statement in the GRR. The modifications included in the SEA are the 3 new or modified stormwater detention basins and the 2 new placement areas for excavated material. The SEA is not reassessing items that have already been evaluated. It compares the no-build alternative, which means the existing site conditions without the project, to the 2012 GRR and the recommended PED plan. Key environmental conditions that were investigated include land use, fisheries, water and air quality, vegetation and wildlife habitat, threatened and endangered species, and cultural resources. A more complete list of all assessed environmental conditions are shown on the slide. Environmental benefits for this project include tree planting, which consists of more than 135 acres of floodplain forest, invasive species removal, an overall gain in floodplain forest, plus a 30-year tree canopy monitoring requirement. Proposed benefits also include benefits to the wetlands. Approximately 40 acres of forested wetlands will be restored, and more than 183 acres of non-forested wetlands will be restored. While approximately 37 acres of wetlands are impacted by the project, there is an overall gain in wetland habitats. Overall, there are no anticipated effects to threatened or endangered species or impacts to cultural resources. Now that we have shared details about the project and the supplemental environmental assessment, we want to hear from you. Beginning today, the SEA is available for review in English and Spanish and open for comments during the 30-day comment period. Your input is important to the overall project plan and design. All comments received today during this meeting and during the 30-day comment period will be considered when finalizing the PED recommendation. To view the SEA and submit a comment online, visit the Clear Creek Federal Project webpage at hcfcd.org/C03. If you prefer to review a hard copy and provide a handwritten comment, a printed copy of the SEA and comment forms will be available in both languages at the Harris County Flood Control District's office, located at 9900 Northwest Freeway, Houston, Texas, 77092. If you prefer to mail in your comment, you may do so using the Harris County Flood Control District's address on the screen. Please write "Attention to Clear Creek Federal Flood Risk Management Project" on the envelope. As a reminder, the 30-day public comment period ends on Friday, April 26, 2024. After the comment period ends, the project team will respond to all comments. As far as next steps for the project, here are the upcoming project milestones. We just discussed the first one. The 30-day comment period for the SEA starts today and ends April 26, 2024. Next, we anticipate the completion of the Mud Gully channel conveyance improvements by the end of the third quarter of this year. By the second quarter of 2025, we aim to have the final PED plan routed to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers headquarters for approval to complete the post-authorization change report process. Years, we'll be working on the final designs for each of the remaining project components. We plan to initiate construction in 2028, and by 2032, construction should be complete. However, please note we will continuously be looking for opportunities to accelerate the project timeline. I'll now turn the program back over to Robert to kick off the Q&A.
Thanks, Jonathan. Before we move into the Q&A, I want to share a quick reminder that we're looking for your input. We'd love to hear from you on this and other projects moving forward across Harris County. Your input is critical as we continue to develop project plans for this and other flood risk reduction efforts. All comments and questions received this evening will be considered as we develop plans for this effort, but this conversation doesn't end here. To learn more about this project, ask questions, and sign up for our mailing list, please visit hcfcd.org/C03. As a reminder, there are 3 ways to submit a comment about this project during tonight's session. Submit a comment on this site in the box near the presentation live stream. Submit a comment on the Flood Control District's website at hcfcd.org/C03, or submit a comment via phone at 855-925-2801, utilizing meeting code 6958. If you are joining us via phone tonight, please press star to leave a message. Additionally, I want to reiterate that any questions not addressed during tonight's Q&A will receive a response from the Flood Control District following the close of the comment period. Information from this meeting and a recording of the live stream will be available on the Flood Control District's website and YouTube channel. For our Q&A sessions tonight, we have subject matter experts for the Clear Creek Federal Project, Scott Elmer, Tommy Jo Scott, Jonathan Hawley, and Yasmin Martinez. Now it's time to take some of your questions. All right. First question of the evening is for Tommy Joe. Tommy Joe, can you please explain again the main differences between the general reevaluation report and the recommended pre-construction engineering and design plan?
Sure, if you can go to slide 43. Perfect, thank you. So the main differences is that between the GR and the PED plan is on Clear Creek, the channel conveyance improvements will decrease from 15.1 miles to 6.4 miles. And the components along Mary's Creek and Turkey Creek will be removed. The stormwater mitigation volume is increasing from 500 acre feet in the GR to 2,360 acre feet in the PED plan. All bridge replacements are being removed, and Mud Gully has negligible change between the GR and the PED plan.
All right, thanks, Tommy Joe. This next question is also for you. Tommy Joe, what are the benefits of this project?
Sure, if you can go to slide 55, perfect. The Clear Creek Federal Project is expected to help reduce the overall flood risk for thousands of homes and businesses within the Clear Creek watershed, primarily between State Highway 288 and Interstate 45. With the recommended PED plan, it is estimated that approximately 5,500 acres, let me say that again, 5,500 structures will benefit during a 100-year storm event. This number increases to about 15,300 structures benefiting during a 500-year storm event.
All right, thanks, Tommy Joe. Our next question is for Scott. Scott, here's a question for you. Why does the recommended PED plan not go further downstream to have a positive impact on Clear Lake?
Thank you, Robert. And yep, you got it. Slide 49. The Clear Creek Federal Project has a very specific scope and funding amount that was appropriated and authorized by the federal Congress on that. For example, the project limits were firmly established by Congress along Clear Creek from Highway 288 to FM 1959. We're not allowed to go outside of those project limits without losing the funding and authorization from Congress. This poses a restriction on where project components could be implemented both upstream and downstream. We also have to maintain a similar level of benefits provided in the 2012 General Reevaluation Report to keep within that Chief of Engineer's discretionary authority. While this particular project may not extend project benefits all the way to Clear Lake, we are working on additional projects in the Clear Creek watershed, including providing funding and being a participant in the Lower Clear Creek watershed study.
All right, thank you, Scott. Our next question is for Jonathan. Jonathan, in the presentation, we explained there are two types of stormwater detention basins. Why are wet bottom stormwater detention basins recommended for this project?
Okay. There are several factors that go into deciding whether a basin is more advantageous as a wet bottom or dry bottom stormwater detention basin. And one advantage of having a wet bottom basin versus a dry bottom basin is that wet bottom basins can provide more storage volume. The fixed point in any detention basin is its outfall into the channel, which is typically lower and flatter in a wet bottom basin, and therefore this accommodates a greater volume. Wet bottom basins also provide greater environmental and aesthetic enhancements, and the Hughes, IBC, and City of Pearland stormwater detention basins in this project are all recommended to be wet bottom stormwater detention basins.
All right, thank you, Jonathan. We have one more question. It's also for you. Staying on the wet bottom stormwater detention basin topic, this is a question we often hear. How can a basin full of water hold more water?
Thanks, Robert. The answer is that the basin is not full of water. The basin is excavated down to the natural water table, which provides the permanent pool. And the space for storing stormwater is above the natural water table up to the top of the basin banks.
All right, thank you. And one more question. In Houston, mosquitoes are a concern. We know that standing water can be a mosquito breeding ground. Will wet bottom basins cause the area to have more mosquitoes?
Thanks, Robert. We do hear that question. Flood control district engineers design stormwater detention basins, whether they be wet bottom or dry bottom, to naturally discourage mosquito breeding. Proper basin design and maintenance limits mosquito breeding and without the need for insecticide or compromised water quality. And for this project, we anticipate having less nuisance mosquitoes since the wet bottom basins support a more diverse ecological community of mosquito predators.
All right, thanks, Jonathan. Our next question is for Tommy Joe. Tommy Joe, as the project manager for the Clear Creek Federal Project, can you let us know when construction is anticipated to start and how long will it take for the project to be complete?
Sure. So the good news is that construction has already started. Mud Gully is under construction and is expected to be completed in the third quarter of this year. For the remaining components, phase construction will begin in 2028, and we anticipate the entire project will be completed by 2032. However, the Flood Control District and the Army Corps of Engineers are continuously looking for opportunities to accelerate the project timeline.
All right, thanks, Tommy Joe. We've been asked tonight also, when will the English version of the presentation be available? And the presentation from tonight will be uploaded and made available on our project page tomorrow at located at hcfcd.org/C03. All right. Our next question is for Scott. Scott, traffic impacts and delays during construction is a common concern. For this project, will any bridges be shut down during construction?
Thank you, Robert. Yeah, traffic impacts and impacts on the public in construction is something that we always try to minimize, and it's always of a concern of ours. On this particular project, we do not anticipate any bridges being shut down during the construction of this project. However, there could very well be temporary impacts to traffic. It's still a little bit early to know the specific details of construction and the traffic control plans that will be implemented. But as we know more about the construction timing and the impact, we will keep the community informed and we will provide updates on the project webpage at hcfcd.org/C03. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Scott. Our next question is for Tommy Joe. Tommy Joe, you mentioned the Hughes Stormwater Detention Basin will be constructed next. Can you explain why the plan is to start with a stormwater detention basin before channel conveyance improvements?
Sure. As you said, we have different phases of this project. The first will be Mud Gully, which is under construction. Next will be the Hughes Stormwater Detention Basin. The next is going to be the City of Pearland Stormwater Detention Basins, followed by the 2 channel conveyance improvements as wrapping up the last of the construction. In terms of why we phase this and want to make sure we want to get the stormwater detention basins in first, that's because we want to make sure we have no adverse impacts during construction.
All right, thanks, Tommy Joe. Our next question is for Scott. Scott, some may not be familiar with the term channel conveyance improvements. Can you explain what this term means and how these improvements help reduce the risk of flooding?
Thank you, Robert. Channel conveyance improvements, sometimes we also call them channel modifications. These are designed to help move stormwater more efficiently out of an area by increasing the channel's overall conveyance capacity. We can flow more water down the stream in the same amount of time. This can be accomplished by widening or deepening the channel, by reducing friction, by removing vegetation, or by occasionally adding concrete lining to the channel to also reduce friction.
All right, thank you, Scott. This next question is also for you. Scott, where are the recommended channel conveyance improvements for the Clear Creek Federal Project?
Sure. Slide 49, please. The channel conveyance improvements, as outlined in the PED plan, are concentrated on the main stem of Clear Creek between Cullen Road and Pearland Parkway, and on Mud Gully from Sage Down Lane to just past the Beamer Road Bridge. So you can see Mud Gully on the right side of the screen in gold, and the channel improvements between Cullen and Pearland Parkway on the main stem right south of Beltway 8.
Thanks, Scott. Our next question is for Tommy Joe. Tommy Joe, we have heard the words concrete lining mentioned a few times this evening. Will concrete be used in the channel improvements for this project?
So yes, but it is limited to Mud Gully, where existing concrete lining is being extended. But for the remaining components on Clear Creek, concrete lining is not planned. However, in some areas where erosion is a concern, limited armoring such as buried concrete riprap or limited slope paving around structures such as bridges could be utilized to prevent further erosion and protect the channel from side slope failure.
All right, thanks, Tommy Joe. Jonathan, the next question is for you. Can you please explain what a supplemental environmental assessment is and why it was required for this project?
Robert, Supplemental Environmental Assessment, or SEA, was conducted for modifications to the project that were not included in the 2012 final supplemental environmental impact statement in the general reevaluation report. And this includes the additional stormwater detention basins and placement areas. The environmental conditions that were investigated as part of the assessment include land use, fisheries, and essential fish habitat, threatened and endangered species, culture resources, air quality, as well as all the other environmental resources from the 2012 FSEIS, or Final Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement.
Thank you, Jonathan. Can you remind us again how we can review and comment on the SEA?
Sure. The SEA is available for review and community input during a 30-day public comment period starting today. And to view a digital copy of the SEA and provide a comment online, please visit the Clear Creek Federal Project page at hcfcd.org/C03. And if you prefer to review a hard copy or provide a handwritten comment, printed copies of the assessment and comment forms are available at the Harris County Flood Control District.
This project during tonight's session. Submit a comment on this site in the box near the presentation live stream. Submit a comment on the Flood Control District's website at hcfcd.org/C03, or you can submit a comment via phone at 855-925-2801, utilizing meeting code 6958. If you are joining us via phone tonight, please press star and you can leave a message. And also, any questions not addressed during tonight's Q&A will receive a response from the Flood Control District following the close of the comment period. And also, the recording of this live stream and information from this meeting will be available on the Flood Control District's website and YouTube channel. All right. Moving forward. Next question. Right. And our next question is for Jonathan. Jonathan, could you please remind us when the comment period ends?
Sure, Robert. Yeah, just the 30-day comment period starting today for the project ends on Friday, April 26, 2024. So that's Friday, April 26, 2024 is the close of the comment period.
Okay. And just a few more questions here for you, Jonathan. What environmental enhancements are planned as part of the Clear Creek Federal Project?
Okay, can we go to slide 62? Thank you. So as a result of extensive public outreach efforts and studies, multiple environmental components have been incorporated into the Clear Creek Federal Project to preserve and enhance the environmental function of the riparian corridor. Environmental considerations and enhancements include impacts to coastal prairies and tidal marsh habitats will be avoided. The existing floodplain forest will be restored or enhanced. Invasive species that impair the success of habitat enhancement and restoration will be removed. An implementation of engineering with nature elements include more than 135 acres of forested floodplain and 40 acres of forested wetlands and 183 acres of non-forested wetlands. Some other benefits include improved water quality to Clear Creek due to these enhancements, as well as the possibility that project partners will make recreational enhancements along Clear Creek through nature trails and hike and bike paths.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan. And also, you mentioned forested wetlands and forested floodplains. What's the difference between the two?
The reason that these are categorized differently is that forested wetlands is a regulated resource with well-defined mitigation measures, while floodplain forests are not regulated, but they do occupy a similar ecological position in the landscape. So the forested wetlands are the native woody vegetation that are uniquely adapted to wetland conditions, whereas the forested floodplains are native woody vegetation that occur along Clear Creek that will be restored to enhance those natural floodplain functions.
All right. Thanks, Jonathan. Our next question is for Tommy Joe. Tommy Joe, you mentioned phased construction. Can you explain what this means and what part of the Clear Creek Federal Project will start construction next?
Sure, if you want to go to slide 49. So just to recap again, we are actually under construction for Mud Gully. But the next phase of the project will be starting in 2028 with the Hughes Stormwater Detention Basin, followed by the City of Pearland Basins, and then we will wrap it all up with the channel conveyance improvements and the corresponding detention features along those reaches.
All right. Thanks, Tommy Joe. Our next question is for Jonathan. Jonathan, will trees be removed to construct this project? And if yes, will the trees be replanted once construction is complete?
Unfortunately, when constructing detention basins, it is necessary to remove all the trees located within the footprint of the basin during excavation. The trees located along the perimeter of this basin footprint are assessed by arborists during the design process, and if they're found to be too close to the excavation area, then they need to be removed. And this is done because the roots of the trees located too close to an excavation area are most often damaged during construction, and these trees are unable to survive. However, when at all possible, we try to maintain native, mature, and high-value trees along the top of the banks to provide a buffer. And for this project, we anticipate having a preserved tree buffer around the perimeter of the trees. So during construction, efforts will be made to protect the roots of these trees that we intend to keep along the perimeter of basins, and we're doing our best to save and protect where we can. The project does include plans for tree reforestation along the channel and stormwater detention basins using native trees from the Flood Control District's nursery and other local nurseries. And once complete, The project will have a total of 135 acres of enhanced floodplain forest in addition to the preserved forested buffers.
All right, thank you, Jonathan. And just one more question regarding trees. Can you please explain the tree restoration process?
Sure. So the flood control district will use best practices for tree restoration areas, and this includes planting native trees that are 5 gallon in size and planted at a density of 40 trees per acre along the banks. And the habitat success will be based on achieving canopy cover and native species composition that will be monitored for 30 years.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Jonathan. Our next question is for Tommy Joe. Tommy Joe, the presentation mentioned acquisitions. Will there be any right-of-way acquisitions needed for this project?
So to build projects which include widening and deepening bayous and their tributaries and constructing large stormwater detention basins, the flood control district often needs to acquire additional land for right-of-way, which could include homes, businesses, and other structures. While the recommended PED plan requires less acquisitions than the GRR plan, there will be some private and public right-of-way acquisitions needed for the project sites, including stormwater detention basins and placement areas. The information cannot be shared publicly until the property owners are contacted first. For more details on the property acquisition process, please see the right-of-way acquisition section on the project page at hcfcd.org/C03.
Thank you, Tom Joe. And this next question is also for you. How is this project being funded?
Sure, this project is funded locally through the 2018 Harris County Bond Program. Under the program, there are $70 million that were identified for bond C03. With the PED plan, remaining monies from bond F02 for Hughes will be used to construct the Hughes Stormwater Detention Basin. In total, this will provide $73 million towards the project. Federally, the project has received $187 million in funds through the Bipartisan Budget Act of 2018 passed by Congress.
All right, thank you. And staying on this topic, Tommy Joe, how much will the project cost to implement the recommended PED plan?
Sure, the Clear Creek federal project is anticipated to cost $295 million.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Tommy Joe. Our next question is for Scott. Scott, this is a question that gets asked frequently about all flood control district project sites. Will there be any recreational amenities planned around this project?
Thank you, Robert. While there are no recreational plans included in the scope of the federal project, and any addition would potentially compromise the funding received by the Army Corps of Engineers, since this would be seen as a betterment. While the Flood Control District does not construct or maintain recreational amenities, the Flood Control District does support the multi-use of its facilities for recreation and open space, as long as those activities do not interfere with the project's purpose to reduce flood risk and provide environmental enhancements. Specific to this project, there are multiple recreational facilities proposed within or directly adjacent to the project facilities after the project is completed. Different recreational plans are proposed by the City of Pearland, Harris County Precinct 1, Harris County Precinct 2, and the Houston Parks Board.
All right, thank you, Scott. Now, our next question is also for you. What does PACR mean?
PACR, great. Another good acronym. PACR stands for Post Authorization Change Report. This is the formal process we're currently going through with the Army Corps of Engineers to route the recommended modifications that were deemed significant for the technical and policy review and approval. A conditional approval was received on these proposed modifications in November of 23, and final approval is dependent upon the completion of the NEPA process, or the National Environmental Policy Act process.
All right, thank you, Scott. Our next question is for Tommy Joe. Tommy Joe, can you remind us why the Clear Creek Federal Project needed to be evaluated again?
Sure, this was a recommended next step in the 2012 GRR General Reevaluation Report to account for any major changes in development in the watershed and upgrades in technology on how stormwater effects are analyzed. To give perspective, the GRR was kicked off in 1999, so that means that the data is almost 30 years old. Through the reevaluation process, we discovered a number of issues with the GRR plan if it was implemented, including that a level of benefits provided by the project were no longer met the benefits previously approved by Congress. The recommended modifications in the PED plan address these issues.
All right, thanks, Tommy Joe. This next question is also for you. Can you explain why the recommendation is to remove some of the original components from the project?
Yes, through the reevaluation process, we found many areas that were not producing the benefits originally identified in the GR. For example, Mary's Creek and portions of Clear Creek experienced a lot of redevelopment, with many of these previously existing structures were raised out of the 100-year floodplain. Through the same area, there were previous channel works or buyout programs from other agencies that further eliminated the need or prevented the project from continuing in these areas. For Turkey Creek, it is right next to Mud Gully, and a lot of the benefits we were already captured with the Mud Gully channel conveyance improvements and with the South Belt Stormwater Detention Basin. Additionally, field investigations uncovered significantly more pipeline conflicts that would require more relocations than originally anticipated, which made this cost prohibitive. All in all, some of the improvements were also removed because they were transferred their risk of flooding downstream, which could not be offset by the stormwater detention basins that were originally identified in the GRR plan.
All right, thank you, Tommy Joe. What other projects in the area support the Clear Creek Federal Project?
There are two. Going to slide 49. Thanks. The South Belt Stormwater Detention Basin and the Stormwater Detention Basin at Reverend William and Audrey Lawson Park are supporting this project. These two sites provide stormwater mitigation by temporarily storing excess stormwater during storm events. Both of these stormwater detention basins were completed in 2023.
All right, thanks, Tommy Joe. Our next question is for Scott. Scott, we touched on this a little earlier, but can you explain the difference between a wet bottom stormwater detention basin and a dry bottom basin?
Sure. A wet bottom stormwater detention basin is a basin that features a permanent pool of water at the bottom of the basin. And we often include native wetland vegetation in a sense and habitat maintenance zones. We are sometimes asked, how can this hold water if it already has water in it? And as Jonathan said earlier, this is not a full basin. The difference between the current water surface elevation and the top of bank is where that storage occurs on that. Dry bottom basins feature grass lining, pilot channels, and cross slopes that allow us to mow fairly easily on that, and it allows it to drain completely between rain events. Essentially, a dry bottom basin drains dry and remains dry between the rain events rather than maintaining a permanent pool of water like you see on the left side of the screen.
All right, thank you, Scott. Our next question is for Tommy Joe. Tommy Joe, what is the current stage of the project?
So we are actually in two different stages in the project. First is Mud Gully, which is already in the construction stage. And then for the remaining components, for the Clear Creek section, we are in the pre-construction engineering and design, or PED stage.
All right, thank you, Tommy Joe. Our next question is for Scott. Scott, what is the goal of the Clear Creek Federal Flood Risk Management Project?
Thanks, Robert. The goal of the project is to reduce flood risk in the area by providing a combination of channel conveyance improvements and stormwater detention basins, as well as to enhance the environmental conditions through habitat restorations and invasive species removal.
All right. Thank you, Scott. Our next question is for Tommy Joe. Tommy Joe, why was the Mud Gully Channel why was the Mud Gully Channel conveyance improvements component of the project able to move into the construction stage, while the rest of the project is in the pre-construction engineering and design stage?
So Mud Gully has been developed since the 1970s with minimal changes to the region, and any mitigation needed for this project reach was being provided with the construction of the South Belt Stormwater Detention Basin. There were some minor modifications to the GRR plan layout for Mud Gully. However, these changes remained within the area analyzed under the 2012 final supplemental environmental impact statement. Therefore, Mud Gully was able to progress to construction.
All right. And does the Clear Creek Federal Project Plan take the new Atlas 14 rainfall data into consideration?
It does. The 2012 GR plan was not based on Atlas 14. It was based on the 1998 USGS data. So it was not based on the Atlas 14 rainfall standards as it was authorized by the federal government prior to Atlas 14 standards being developed. However, the recommended plan was to update it to consider the Atlas 14 rainfall data under this packer.
All right. Thank you. And also, how is climate change considered with the recommended head plan?
So we are required by the Army Corps of Engineers to look at climate change, and this was emphasized by executive order by the Biden administration. For this project, we are looking at future trends, including sea level rise, inland hydrology, such as changes to rainfall and changes to development. This analysis is ongoing.
All right. And also, is Clear Creek affected by tidal influences?
So Clear Creek is impacted by tidal or affected by tidal influences. Tidal influences are essentially how the flow of Galveston Bay pushes up and down Clear Creek. For this project, we are pretty far upstream. Therefore, we don't see a lot of impacts related to tidal influences. However, we are still required by the Army Corps of Engineers to investigate this, and this investigation is ongoing.
All right. Thank you, Tom and Joe. Our next question is for Scott. Scott, going back to the beginning, can you please share with us how was this project identified?
Thanks, Robert. Slide 25, please. The original study that investigated the problem of flooding along Clear Creek was authorized by the U.S. Flood Control Act of 1962. The first plan that was submitted to Congress and obtained project authorization under the U.S. Flood Control Act of 1968. So it's been a long time coming, and we are getting there.
All right. Thanks, Scott. Our next question is also for you. Since there is a partnership between the Flood Control District and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, what is the Flood Control District responsible for, and what are the responsibilities of the Army Corps of Engineers?
Sure. Under our 2019 Project Partnership Agreement, the Flood Control District was formally recognized as the team lead for implementing the Clear Creek Federal Project Program. As the lead agency, the Flood Control District will manage, design, and build the project, will buy land, easements, and right-of-way necessary for this, will relocate utilities as needed, and will operate and maintain the project after construction is complete. The Flood Control District will also potentially enter into separate interlocal agreements to share the non-federal costs and the operation and maintenance responsibilities for the project. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers will be responsible for providing the administration, oversight, and performance of inherently governmental functions related to compliance with the environmental and historic statutes. The pilot program also allows the Army Corps of Engineers to advance the projected federal share of eligible project costs to the non-federal sponsor before those costs are incurred.
All right. Thank you, Scott. And we are getting towards the end of the evening now. Just one last question for Tommy Joe. Tommy Joe, where can attendees go to ask questions after this meeting?
If you have additional questions or comments about this project, please go to the project webpage at hcfcd.org/C03 and submit a comment online. If you prefer to provide a handwritten comment, printed copies of the supplemental environmental assessment and comment forms are available during the 30-day comment period at the Harris County Flood Control District's office located at 9900 Northwest Freeway, Houston, Texas 77092. Comments may be mailed to this address. If you decide to mail in your comments, please write to attention to the Clear Creek Federal Flood Risk Management Project on the mailing envelope. All comments received during the 30-day SCA comment period will be considered when finalizing the final PED recommendation.
All right, thank you. And with that, I would like to share one final reminder that the comment period associated with the SEA runs now through Friday, April 26, 2024. You can also sign up for our mailing list through the project webpage at hcfcd.org/C03. This will ensure you receive project updates via email. Lastly, we also encourage everyone to get flood insurance as flood season in Harris County runs year-round. Thank you again for joining us this evening and for providing your input on this project. We look forward to continuing to share updates as our work moves forward. Stay safe and have a good evening.